Hey, Internet, my name is Teacher on the Radio, and this is the Music Nerds Record Club, number 12. And last month was the best of, and it didn't have a number. So we've been at it for a year. My friend from New City, New York, Joe Guinness, also from Detroit, Michigan, he started this off with The Clash exactly 1 year ago. We've got Greenberg from Charlotte, North Carolina, and from Nashville, Tennessee, we have Amy Rock and Rick Quinn. And hey, from Cookeville, Tennessee, also like Teacher on the Radio, we have Gus Creeder, or
Indiana Jones,
sometimes known as August Creeder. Get your audio going on there, August Creeder. He's gonna kick us
off. Sorry.
We're good.
Welcome.
So this is the last 30 minutes of the old format, and we're gonna adjust our time. We started late, so 30 minutes will go to about 6:37, where we're going to discuss a classic album, and Gus is going to tell us all about this month's pick. And then for the last 30 minutes, we're just going to freestyle in conversation mode, which we were practicing very much so off camera. And then next month, it's going to be something new. We're going to all stay after our live broadcast tonight and discuss the plans for number 13, the lucky number 13. Of Music Nerds Record Club next month. So we're from Cookeville, Nashville, Charlotte, and New City, New York, and we are going to get started with our curator for the month, talking about what I think Rolling Stone magazine and many other places have said is the greatest album of all time.
All righty. Well, everybody, I'm sorry I was a little late today, but I am so excited to be discussing this album today. Albums like Marvin Gaye's classic 1971 record, What's Going On, prove the saying that time is a flat circle. It is 2025. For all of our United States-based listeners, which I am assuming is most of them, we can acknowledge that we are living through an era of unjust war, the perpetuation of cattywampus political ideology, and somehow, despite all of our perceived progress, more racial tension, especially in the online Wild West, than we have seen in years. On top of that, we have a sitting president who does all but inspire hope in our country's future, and a soon-to-be president that somehow felt like the obvious choice to the majority of our messy, young, bloodthirsty nation. Now, I know that when we all hear that, we think about the hellfire of a year that 2024 turned out to be. But to those unlike myself who were actually around to see how previous generations handled adversity, they may see the immediate parallels to the late 1960s through the 1970s with the passing of power between Nixon and Ford and the United States' forced inclusion in the Vietnam War. And somehow, despite it undeniably feeling like our country is over, freedom stripped with no clear answers in sight, and an administration that seemingly would be happy to see us, the people, fall in the name of money and tradition, art continues to prevail. This is where Marvin Gaye's What's Going On fits into this. Marvin starts the album with debatably its most iconic song, the title track, What's Going On. If you hear this track and you do not visualize Gaye cruising through the Detroit streets in an old Buick and a puffer, wisping away the snow, your imagination may be a little behind. The pleas for equality and the anti-war sentiment embody the album's ethos. Gaye, in what I believe is an attempt to reach out to those who would initially be unwilling or unable to understand the plight that war brings to a people, uses the song to speak to his family, mother, brother, father, asking that we do not sit in silence and we do not escalate. Instead, we should try to understand each other. The following track, What's Happening, Brother, is another proud piece protesting the Vietnam War from the perspective of a veteran returning home, witnessing the hate and exclusion in his country. Not only is it substantive, but the soothing background vocals and popping congas help the track and the album as a whole earn the label of sonic bliss. While the content and context is what makes What's Going On the classic that it is, the magic of this era is that even the oblivious can find solace in the music's pure beauty. Marvin Gaye is one of the greatest vocalists of all time, point blank period, and the string sections, unique percussion, and classic soul and Motown sounds are enough to draw in any listener. While most of the record falls into similar sonic themes, the greatest standout to me is track 7, Right On, which might be my favorite. The Latin flair in the production on Ride On is a welcome change of pace for a nearly 7-minute opus on the album, all about doing what you can to help your fellow man. And that, as mentioned before, is the album's ethos. Why go out of your way to put more evil into the world when showing compassion is so easily accessible? This is a question that is better asked now than I believe any other point in history. I'm aware that the focus of my portion of our discussion has been less on the music and more on the album's context. But realistically, what more is there to say about what's going on? Like, especially by a white 20-year-old boy from Tennessee who simply has a deep love for music. This record was placed at #1, as Andy mentioned, on Rolling Stone's list of the top 500 greatest albums of all time. And a few years back, it passed its 50th year anniversary and is still as discussed in music circles as ever. The discourse surrounding what's going on is nearly as commonplace and well documented as the record itself. But the most incredible thing about this record is that despite its tenure as one of the greatest albums ever recorded, it manages to be as relevant as ever. This both breaks and warms my heart, as I imagine Gay, who passed in 1984, would also feel. The fact that this album remains so firmly in the public consciousness is a testament to its undeniable quality, and as well as its themes, while being a tragic reminder of how much progress we are still missing out on to become one true, real, complete, loving nation. Younger generations are very lucky to have this at our fingertips, though if the world and especially our country had gotten even just a little bit brighter over the years, maybe it would fall through the cracks for many more music fans. As the winter rages on, I will continue to return to what's going on, as I plan to do around this time every year. And with that, I will be passing the baton off to our next speaker. Thank you so much for listening and being here this week.
Hello. Thank you, Gus. That was great. That was great. Yeah, and as I was listening to this, in preparation for this chat, I thought the same thing. Like, oh yeah, it slots perfectly into now with the same grievances isn't the right word, but you know what I'm saying. Anyway, what's going on? It's an album that sort of hovered over my life since I first came upon it at a friend's house, probably in 76, 77, that mysterious picture on the front with him gazing off into who knows where, the picture of him on the back standing in the rain. He's a good looking man, and he's like a brooding man, and that comes across in this music. His whole life was marked by mental health struggles. And thinking about that now, which is something I didn't think about, that puts those songs into context. It's true. What's Happening, Brother is about a returning Vietnam vet. That happened to be his own brother, Frankie, who inspired much of this record. He came back from the war, like a lot of other men did, fairly broken. So he had Marvin had a very direct input of that experience, and that informed this writing. I always felt like Marvin Gaye was kind of a sort of patron saint figure of emotional struggle and resulting in amazing art. He's a guy who's all right, I got to reset. He's just kind of at the top of his game. He put out a couple of records here that two records set, like one set after one record followed up by the other. What's Going On followed up by Let's Get It On, that are kind of amazing musical bookends. I don't know of a lot of 1-2 punches like that in music, just these epic statements that What's Going On is. course, my favorite songs among them, "What's Going On" is amazing. I like "Flying High in the Friendly Skies," even as trite as it always seemed to me, it still was amazing. "Mercy, Mercy Me," uh, um, and lastly, what I think is maybe another archetypal Marvin Gaye song is "Inner City Blues," "Make Me Want to Holler." That's that sort of encapsulates his own emotional struggles against a, a world that's so cold and forbidding sometimes. Anyway, it's a beautiful record by a beautiful man who died tragically, um, shockingly and tragically, a day before his, I think, 40th birthday, maybe 45th birthday. Anyway, that's what I got. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Joe, Gus, well said. As being the third of three people here originally from the Motor City, I swell with pride whenever I hear Motown, and whenever I drive home, I kind of feel like as I'm driving out of Toledo into the city on 75, I feel like I should be hearing the opening strains of Stevie Wonder's "Uptight It's All Right," like it's like a herald. But I digress. This is I don't know what I can say that hasn't already been said, and I already decided I wasn't gonna prepare remarks because it just didn't seem like the thing to do. I'm like, first and foremost, this is an album of the times, for the times, not just the times that it was made, but the times we're living. We're in peak dumpster fire right now, and this album is as relevant today as it's ever been, and it will probably continue to be relevant for quite some time, and that's part of what's so great about it. But none of that would mean anything if the music wasn't great, and the music is great. And even if you just had no social conscience, it would be nearly impossible to resist these songs. But the thing is, these songs are great from a sonic standpoint, but they also touch the soul. And that's what I love about it. I've spent a lot of time listening to this over the past month, getting ready for this. I've listened to the Sound Opinions classic album dissection of this, which I would be really tempted to just regurgitate all those facts, and I highly recommend it. But one of the things I will crib from Sound Opinions is I love that this was a turning point for Marvin. He was hit hard by the death of Tammy Terrell, and he was hit hard by the death of Dr. King, and he was starting to move in that direction. He had a hit in the UK with his cover of Abraham, Martin, and John. Even his version of I Heard It Through the Grapevine had a darkness and just a grit to it that Gladys Knight's version, as great as it was, didn't have. Marvin was singular in the respect that he was going through this dark period, and he had this song and he had to get it out, and he got it out. And the story behind how the song What's Going On came together is pretty astounding. And again, if I win the lottery tomorrow, I want to put everybody on a plane and take you to the Motown Museum, because you got to stand in that little room where all this magic happened. And just, yeah, I'm struggling to find the words because, Marvin already said it best. But the thing that was so cool about this is that Marvin, who up until this point was the soldier, he did whatever Berry Gordy wanted because he was his friend and his mentor. He was family too because he was married to Berry's sister. But at this point, Marvin was like, you know what? I've been a loyal soldier. I got this thing. I want to do it. And he put together this epic song, and Berry Gordy said that is the worst thing I ever heard. But he said, okay, we'll roll the dice on this. And when it became a big hit, Barry's like, all right, what else you got? And a lesser person would have caved under the pressure. But Marvin gave us this suite. I do believe that this album is a suite of songs. And before I revisited it, I felt it was that way. But I forgot there's this annoying gap between what's going on and what's happening. And I feel like that should be segued better. I know I'm splitting hairs because elsewhere through the album, it just segues one through the other. It's just this glorious suite, this tone poem of just, it's like a tapestry of what is wrong in our world and what the hell can we do about it. And it's vibrant and it rings as true today as it ever rang. And on top of that, he ushered in a whole new era. Granted, he was not the first in the milieu of soul to get topical. I'm like, Norman Whitfield, that's a guy you need to look into, who wrote a lot of the more psychedelic, gritty songs for the Temptations. He was going in that direction. Curtis Mayfield was doing it, but Marvin made it an art form. Marvin was so successful with what's going on that he inspired Stevie to go, I want to do what Marvin did, and then went on to release 5 classic albums in a row. And if we didn't have what's going on, if we didn't have Mercy, Mercy Me, if we didn't have Inner City Blues, which is my favorite off the album, because so many times I want to holler and throw up my hands. But if we didn't have what's going on, we wouldn't have Stevie's Living for the City or Higher Ground. We wouldn't have so much of the great protest music that came after that. I'm like, if for nothing else, we all owe a big debt of gratitude to Marvin for that. And he, even like around the time that there were some riots in 1965, and he said something to the effect of, with all this stuff going on, how can I continue to sing love songs? But that's the beauty and the genius of Marvin, is that he wrote this suite, this social, this socially conscious suite. And then before that, just a lovely array of duets with Tammy Terrell and Kim Weston and Mary Wells, and then went on to do, right after this album that took a hard look at the world, went ahead and took a soft look into the bedroom with Let's Get It On, and then Sexual Healing. And just, Marvin was the whole picture. And I think maybe I strayed a little bit from the focus of what's going on, but I like to think that by highlighting just how influential and what impact he had on music, on the ethos of Motown, and just culture in general. I don't know about you, but I feel lucky to live in a time when Marvin Gaye lived. That's all I got.
Scott's going to make me cry, and I felt everything he said so hard. Joe and Gus, thank you. Gus, thank you for picking this album. Man, so I lived in Woodbridge on Commonwealth. I lived in the corridor at 1,000 different apartments. I lived over on 4th Street. I could walk from that 4th Street house to the Motown Museum, and I didn't even think about going to the Motown Museum until I'd been gone from that city for 20 years. I didn't even think about Motown. Motown was kind of bubblegum in a way. I mean, I love some of the hits that I heard, and I grew up, knowing how much some of people I love, like Billy Bragg, for example, from England, was influenced by Motown. But I was into punk rock and all this other stuff, and Motown really didn't. And by this time, of course, as Joe and Scott remember, it was Detroit techno, and hip hop, was right around the corner as well. So I didn't appreciate Motown music till much later. And my way into this album is through its civil rights connection with its spirituality and with its humanity. And I think when I studied the 1960s, I'm a scholar of the 60s, I think it's popular for people to put the hippies in one basket over here and the civil rights movement in one basket over here, and to split the civil rights movement between Martin and Malcolm and Black Power and Southern Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and split us into these little buckets. And the hippies were their own bucket, right? And what this album, and like the Staple Singers before them, what this album does is it brings all those things together. It brings Martin Luther King Jr., but also Black Power. It brings the hippies and the African-American community, and it brings it all together in one place. And there's 2 gospel songs on here that haven't even been mentioned yet by my colleagues. And I was in Nashville, Tennessee, going to Vanderbilt University for theology school about a decade ago. And I remember walking into a coffee house and seeing a flyer for a What's Going On themed church service on Good Friday. Now, if you're not from the South, or you're not from the African-American church, or you're not a Christian, you might not realize what a big deal a Good Friday service is in the Southern tradition and in the Black tradition, because in the Black church, they like to say after James Cone that Jesus got lynched, right? And so I went to this Black church in the middle of Nashville, and they did a full 3-hour Marvin Gaye Good Friday service. And it was the most profound thing I just about ever experienced. Marvin was famous for saying, he's quoted in the Michael Eric Dyson book as saying that the 2 most important things to him in the world are Jesus and a euphemism for female genitalia. That's how he said it. He said, I like Jesus, and I like that word that is a synonym for your kitten that you like to pet at night. So that was Marvin. That's how he rolled. And Scott already mentioned that this was immediately followed by Let's Get It On and Sexual Healing, and the rawness that he would talk about eroticism, Black male eroticism, even possibly a Black male eroticism that's got tinges of bisexuality. And to talk about a Black male eroticism with the same force that he says God is love. And I love that pun at the next to the last song, holy, holy. We're complete. Whole means everything, the embodiment of all of what our humanity is, which is all of our flaws, all of our good, all of our sad. And Marvin Gaye's father was a Pentecostal preacher and shot him in cold blood. And there seemed to be some kind of an Oedipal, Freudian war triangle surrounding the mother, Marvin's mother, and the wife of his father, who murdered him in cold blood. It's a tragic story. It's a freaky story. Joe, my colleague, brought up his NBA national anthem singing. And you know how people, they love to just trash on some pop star who does a rendering of the national anthem that doesn't fit your expectations, and everybody thinks that they own that song. Well, in my opinion, it's a freaking horrible song. Okay, it's a terrible choice. This Land Is Your Land by Woody Guthrie is my national anthem. It's hard to sing, and the lyrics are about blowing people to bits, and you can see how far that's gotten us. So when Marvin Gaye did that rendering at the NBA game, I thought it was beautiful, because he turned it into a gospel song. He turned it into a sexy gospel song. At that, I love my America, as everybody's saying this. We're on the eve of this dumpster fire that we're going to be experiencing together, and I'm going to be leaning on music more than I have ever leaned on music before. I'm going to be leaning on my music nerd team here to help me survive the next 4 years. One other thing I want to speak to, you guys have spoken so well to some of the other songs and some of the other contexts of this record. But it was just mentioned in passing, Mercy, Mercy Me, the Ecology. This is around the time of the first Earth Day. And, you've got Christmas songs, and you've even got Thanksgiving songs, and you've got all the peace and love songs. When the war between Russia and Ukraine started in 2022, I made like a humongous peace song playlist. I mean, the peace songs are out there. We don't have enough Mother Earth songs, love the creation. And as California is burning in these fires that are are made possible by this climate catastrophe in which we're living, this slow burn apocalypse in which we're all going through the consequences of, and creating refugees and creating casualties from the climate crisis. Here, Marvin Gaye, 54 years ago, is creating this anthem of loving and respecting the earth. I freaking love that song so much. It's such an important song. I'm looking at my Spotify numbers. It's got the second most streams on it from What's Going On, even more than Inner City Blues or What's Happening, Brother. And keep in mind, too, this album is 9 songs and 35 minutes long. It's the perfect album. You know, it's like your commute. If you've got a commute, you can get through the album in your commute. Sometimes when I'm in the car driving we are talking Motown, right? People still drive cars, and I have to turn off a really good album because I didn't get through it, you know, because before I got home. If you got a decent commute, this is the perfect album for a portion of your day. Thank you, Gus, so much for choosing the greatest album of the 20th century. A man who was born in the 21st century and is a scholar of hip hop and so many other genres of music. For his choices, his 2 choices, he's picked 70s albums by men of color that are very boundary pushing. I mean, boundary smashing albums. I love Marvin Gaye. I love this album. I love everything my colleagues have said about it. And I'm going to pass the torch now to Amy Rock. Amy, you're muted.
Yeah, I am muted. Hello. Oh, I am so just blown away with what all y'all had to say about this album, and blown away by this album. This was a huge gap in my music appreciation knowledge. I mean, Gus can relate. It's just, there's so much good music that everything that's coming out now today is built upon, that you have to really deliberately go and like learn about it, or if you're lucky enough to have folks to introduce it to you. But this may or may not have been one of the albums in the mix growing up. It definitely sounds like the things that my family enjoyed, the jazzy sound to it and the soulful Motown singing. I really love just the instrumentation of it. It's just an interesting sounding album. And there's absolutely nothing I can say to build on what Andrew just said about the meaning and lyrical content of this album. I did listen to that Sound Opinions discussion about this album. So thank you, Greenberg, for that. What I took away from that was just how uncompromising he was about building the album he wanted. It was kind of a unique thing. I think Scott said he was like a soldier before, and just like having to follow all the rules versus just making the music that was in his heart. And like, what a beautiful thing to have in your heart, this album. I also liked how Gus was talking about how like the climate of today feels like the early 70s. And just in my own interests and curiosities lately, I've been kind of deep diving the culture and music of that era. So this lands very squarely in my understanding of that time and culture, and how, like we were just saying, the context and content of these songs just really resonates today, and feels really good to hear someone singing about peace and loving God and loving Earth, and it's just all one thing that's really beautiful. Yeah, I don't have too much to add. I really loved listening to this album. I love that it was nice and short. I listened to it several times over the last couple of days, and just really loving being in it. It's just such a good vibe and a good winter vibe. So I appreciate it. That's all I have. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Amy, and thank you, Gus, and everyone. Like has been said before, what more can be said? I'm batting cleanup on an album that is just as Andrew indicated, perfect. And I want to echo and expand on what Andrew said. He said there are 2 gospel songs on this album, and I want to argue that this entire album is infused, oozes gospel from start to finish. I think this is one of the best, and maybe one of the last records that captures a sense of spirituality and a sense of the political and the zeitgeist of the times. There's just something going on from start to finish with this album. We're most of us are probably aware of the lore around this album. Amy indicated how he stood on his principles and held out until the great Berry Gordy gave in. This was really a transitional moment. Gordy understood the climate of America and the way in which the white establishment saw Black artists, and particularly Black men, as threats, and wanted to stay away from the political. But something got a hold of Marvin, and his fortitude brought this wonderful album together. I'm fascinated by the fact that here we are with the Detroit Lions being probably the odds-on favorite to make it to the Super Bowl and possibly win this year. They also have a part in this album. The conversation you hear at the beginning of the opening track, what's going on, and throughout are two of Marvin's friends from the Detroit Lions, running back Mel Farr and defensive back Lim Barney, who struck up a friendship with him, and Marvin pressured and begged and got a tryout with the Detroit Lions, having never played high school or football or have gone to college. I am sure that that was an interesting time for him. But I do want to say that the second side of this album, starting with Ride On, is just my favorite part. When I heard it again, the song Ride On, it reminded me of the way in which, and this may sound silly, the way in which Sesame Street introduced me, a white Southern kid, to the sounds of soul, the sounds of the city, broadened my horizons in a way. Holy Holy is wonderful, but it really is that break before, through the album. Each song seems to roll into the next one until Inner City Blues makes me want to holler. And even as smooth as that is, you can hear the quiet rage, that comes from a sense of injustice and a passion for justice in an unjust world. It's like many of my colleagues said, it's unfortunate that we still need to hear it. It would be nice if we were at the point where we could say in past tense in his Holy Holy that we had that we've already shaken the foundations of this world. But it's good, and I thank Gus for bringing us back to this, because again, this is a stubborn hope that we need to hold on to. So thank you, Gus. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, Marvin.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we all agreed beforehand today that for the last half an hour, we were just going to stir it up between the six of us tonight. We have many topics on possible tap. Would somebody like to volunteer to transition us out of this fabulous conversation about Marvin Gaye's What's Going On? And if you've never listened to that album, if you're like Amy Rock and this was a gap in your musical education, can you please go and listen to What's Going On with Marvin Gaye? But first, listen to the rest of Music Nerds Record Club number 12 on this cold January night in early 2025, the last 7 days of the J.R. Biden administration here in the United States. Okay. Somebody, we in the backstage room on our endless group chat, we've thrown many topics up there. Who wants to kick us off with one of our 3 or 4 possible last half hour topics.
If no one volunteers, we're talking about Bonnaroo.
Let's go. Let's talk about Bonnaroo and festivals in general and the coming concert season in the warm months. Amy, kick us off.
All right. Well, I locked in my ticket for Bonnaroo 2025 because it is a banger of a lineup. It hasn't been this good since 2020 when I had a ticket then, and you know what happened after that. So let me tell you your headlines. On Thursday, Luke Combs, Big Country Star. Tyler, the Creator on Friday. Olivia Rodrigo with Avril Lavigne on Saturday. Sunday has Hozier, Vampire Weekend, and Queens of the Stone Age on that top line. It just goes down from there. I told you in my top albums of the year that you had to keep your eye on the EDM artists I was propping up. Headlines, John Summit and Justice. Oh, thank you, Andy. You'll notice on the top right a little button that says King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard with 3 sets.
Oh, wow.
Bonnaroo is doing a residency. And we'll have a music nerd's favorite, Remy Wolf, doing the Super Jam this year. So it's pretty exciting top to bottom. They're also introducing a new stage called the Infinity Stage, which is we'll see what it is, but it's 360 sound and light, where the artist can play with production and get the sounds coming from all the different directions. So that's going to be super cool. I've been in a group chat with a bunch of other fans and some of the directors of the festival, and they've been dropping hints and getting us stoked in there. So this is the thing I'm most excited about right now. If anyone else has questions or thoughts.
Oh, I just want to know who your top 5 must-sees at Bonnaroo are.
Let's see. Tipper is an EDM artist. It's kind of like clicky and brain tickly, and that will be super cool in the 360 stage. I really hope they put him on there. Let's see. Justice and John Summit on those headlines. Those are the EDM artists I told you to keep an eye out for. LSZ is LS Dream and Closey, which are 2 EDM artists that are awesome, which will also be so cool on the biggest stage possible. Let's see. Jax Mannequin is one of my friend's all-time favorites. She loves what's his name? And Andrew McMahon. So I'll have to go see them for her. Was that 5?
Ballpark.
I've never been to a festival. Never been.
What?
The thought fills me with a lot of anxiety.
That's valid.
But it just overwhelmed by that, and the idea of hustling around and running into people and stuff. But every year I get a pang.
Yeah. Well, Bonnaroo is one that's not for the faint of heart because you are camping out in the middle of June.
Yeah. No, I don't think that would be the one I'd start with.
Yeah.
I'm inviting you again to this one, Joe. I don't know what night I'm going to go, but I'm hoping to get back to my brother's house in central Massachusetts, and this is in western Massachusetts. It features Waxahachie and MJ Lenderman. Down the card is also Grace Bowers on the Hodgepodge, who's also going to be at Bonnaroo, who we also saw, Rick and I saw at a festival earlier in 2024 at the Bourbon and Beyond, as were the Future Birds. We've been chatting about the Future Birds on our group chat. So this is a much smaller, much less ambitious. You don't sleep there. You can buy a one-day ticket. And it's in a very beautiful, like a county park in rural Massachusetts, kind of small town, Western Mass. What other big shows do y'all have coming up, or do y'all want to give Amy some tips or feedback? Amy, I'll say this: my eyes literally popped out of my head when I saw that ICP, the Juggalos, the Faygo Soda. There's another Detroit connection. Faygo Soda, that insane clown posse is going to be at Bonnaroo.
I was pretty shocked when I saw that.
Yeah.
They were at Riot Fest a couple years ago, and
that makes more sense.
Yeah.
Well,
But still, they said like the Juggalos were there, but didn't like ruin the vibe or anything. So it'll be fun.
There you go.
from the lineup you just showed, Andrew, I'm excited about what I've seen and heard from the Julian Baker and Torres.
Yes.
I'm excited about that album. I was hoping to see them on the Bonnaroo
So,
card.
does
But
anybody know about when we might get a full album from them?
I haven't heard.
That single is a banger.
Mm-hmm.
I like it a lot. I'm going to see Fantastic Negrito, and it has been too damn long since he's toured these parts. And while I'm trying to like not spend a ton of money when I'm in between jobs, he's playing in a place where tickets are reasonably priced, so I feel okay with that. And he's just magnificent live.
Nice.
That'd be cool.
I would love. I'd love to nerd out about something really quick and make it full circle to one of our topics. So with it being winter break for me, and then having a couple days because of the horribly treacherous 2 inches of snow that Cookeville got that shut down our whole town. I've been enjoying a lot of media and getting music from that media. One thing I watched that I'd never seen before this past weekend was The Big Chill. Which is one of my dad's favorite movies. I had never seen it. I honestly thought that it utilized an early incredible form of CGI when I first saw Jeff Goldblum without white hair. But in that, I think it might be the best soundtrack of any movie I've ever seen in my entire life. It's every single song hits. And it got me to go back. I've listened to this album before, but it got me to go revisit music from Big Pink because Wait is in that soundtrack. Mm-hmm. And I've been really into that album lately. Another album that I got into from another album that I've been listening to nonstop is the Little Beaver album, Lady Pearl. Now, Little Beaver he's actually still around playing music in Florida. He was signed to TK Records back in the day. He was the artist that made Bobby Caldwell of What You Won't Do for Love. Day. And he is his first, I think it's probably his first album, at least on streaming, is Party Down. And I love that album. He's like been asked about it and said that he was in Florida and wanted to party and needed music. So he made a party album. But Lady Pearl has this song, Does Anybody Care?, which was sampled on Kendrick Lamar's album from last year on the song Peekaboo. So when I put that together, I've just been deeply obsessed with this Little Beaver album. Now, another piece of long form media that has gotten me obsessed with some albums that's on our list is A Complete Unknown. Man, did I enjoy that biopic. I've seen a lot of biopics of especially musicians, and they've been a little saturated in the last couple of years. But man, I was so impressed by all the performances in it. I think that you could so tell how much Timothée Chalamet cared about playing the role of Bob Dylan. And I have been so into the Freewheelin' album and even going beyond it, like Blood on the Tracks, one of my absolute favorites. Rick, I love that wall. I haven't gotten to point it out yet.
Thank you.
But yeah, I really, really dug that movie. And I know it was on our list for discussion, so I wanted to bring it up. But I got to see it with my dad and some of our close family friends. And it was just such a good time. Like it really flew by. It's not a short movie, and it did not feel as long as it is.
So, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to jump in. I've got a list of new releases I'm looking forward to. I'll run them down real quickly, and I'll quickly give my thoughts on A Complete Unknown. So Holly Cole, Canadian jazz vocalist. I haven't not seen her name around in a minute. She's got a new one coming out on the 24th called Dark Moon. In February, we've got a new album from Sharon Van Etten, except this time it's Sharon Van Etten in The Attachment. I'm looking forward to seeing what that's all about. The one thing I'm kind of like, it's still so too early to like make any predictions, but of the 3 advanced tracks I've heard from the forthcoming Horse Girl album, I'm really seriously looking forward to it. It's called Phonetics On and On. It comes out on Valentine's Day, which is also the day that Captain America New World Order comes out. Marvel nerd. Same day, Gary Loris of the Jayhawks has a solo album. Week after that, Patterson Hood's solo album, Exploding Trees and Airplane Scream. He's got a duet on there with Lydia Lovelace called Werewolf and a Girl that's just, it's extraordinary.
Yeah.
Joe and I are going to be looking forward on the 28th of February. Springboard, early unrecorded songs from the Chills. Can't wait for that. Based on the advanced track I've heard from the forthcoming Bob Mould record, Here We Go Crazy. I'm looking forward to that. That's out in early March. He's got Jason Narducci and John Worster on that one. Japanese Breakfast. I've seen him live 3 times, but the third time was the absolute best. Michelle Zahner is a performer and a guitar shredder extraordinaire for melancholy brunettes and sad women. The one record I'm really seriously looking forward to, and we got the first single from that on Friday, Life, Death, and Dennis Hopper from the Waterboys. This year, we also celebrate the 40th anniversary of This Is the Sea, which we've discussed on here previously. I want to call out 2 singles before I talk about Complete Unknown. And I want to echo Rick's enthusiasm for Sugar in the Tank, the new one from Julian Baker and Torres. But I want to close out by giving it up for a local artist. And I first met this woman. She used to run the office in my mom's apartment building. And she was so nice and such a good human being that we followed each other on the socials. And she makes music under the pseudonym Gemini June. And Gemini is spelled with a J. And so I followed her on her socials. And she dropped her first single called Ready to Fly. And it is just high quality neo soul. And I've only listened to it once, but I'm looking forward to listening to it more. And goodness, I hope that she gets in there and records a full length at some point very soon. My thoughts on A Complete Unknown. Biopics are dicey, and it's usually best when you concentrate on one sliver or a couple of slivers on an artist's career, which is why I love my favorite biopic of all time is Love and Mercy, where Paul Dano and John Cusack play Brian Wilson. To me, it's like the gold standard for biopics. Having said that, A Complete Unknown was good. I can't say it's great. I can't say I loved it. The performances were great. Timothy's commitment to playing and singing, love it. Monica Barbaro, tackling Joan Baez, everybody. The guy who played Johnny Cash, I'm drawing a blank on his name. Even Ed Norton as Pete Seeger. This story was kind of it's like it felt like they were trying to make too much of a enemy versus enemy at Newport when most people were realistically just nonplussed. They weren't that violently upset about it. And I feel like for somebody who has made a career of being as unknowable as Bob Dylan, that to try to do something that makes him knowable is a fool's errand. So did I enjoy it? Yes. Is it better than Bohemian Rhapsody? Fuck yes. Is it the best biopic of all time? No, but it's good. I'd say B+ movie, A+ performances.
It's a good review.
Yes, sir.
I like it.
Well, I think until you've seen it 5 times like I have, that's really an unfounded critique of the greatest biopic of all time. The greatest biopic of all time. The greatest movie. Better than Citizen Kane.
All right.
Better than Forrest Gump. Better than Kramer versus
Okay.
Better than Silence of the Lambs. The best
No.
that was ever made in a cinema on planet Earth.
Wait a minute. Okay. put aside the hyperbole and tell us what you got out of it each successive viewing.
What I got out of it was I saw Bob Dylan that I did not see when I was so wasted at the Ryman in 2006 or 7 or 8, when I blacked out and don't even remember. I didn't even remember seeing Jack White because I was blacked out drunk. Or when I went to see him when I had COVID in Knoxville on the Rowdy Way, the tour that he's on right now. The man sounds horrible. He sounds horrible, and he didn't play the guitar. He hid behind the piano. The Bob Dylan that I didn't see, the Bob Dylan I've consistently not seen when I've gone to see Bob Dylan live. I've not seen Bob Dylan. I've seen the human who inhabits the same skin with generational advancement from that. I met Bob Dylan through Timothy Chalamet that I've never met before. And yes, I think Scott's critique is the critique that is this whole thing hinges on is of course the name The Complete Unknown is like a pun on the fact that of course you can never know Bob Dylan.
Right.
And I disagree that it tried to make us know Bob Dylan. I think it made him even more enigmatic and elusive than he was before. But I felt like I was in the room. I felt like I was in my underwear with Bob Dylan and Joan Baez when they were in their underwear. I mean, I was like, I'm in my underwear with Bob Dylan and Joan Baez, you know. And when Johnny Cash, it's Boyd Holbrook is the actor, when he's crashing his car and knocking the Coke bottle on the ground and offering up the bugles and telling him to track mud on the carpet. I mean, I felt like I was catching a secondhand buzz off of how wasted Johnny Cash was in that scene. He was like, I stayed up all night. I saw the ocean. So I felt present in the cinema the way I did when I first saw the first Star Wars when I was like 9 years old. It was that sense of like, I'm in the room while something magical is happening. And I've gone to see Bob Dylan so many times, and I've never felt the magic at a Bob Dylan concert. I felt the frustrated yearning of the guru is old. The guru is just here for the money this time. You know, the guru is not staying after and meeting with his acolytes to dispel teachings. He's getting in his tour bus and getting the hell out of there before. I was at one show where the tour bus road blocked the exit path for all of the fans. It was a rural venue north of Nashville. They don't even have shows there anymore. And they literally blocked all the fans and like said, you all basically have to stand here. It was like a railroad crossing. So Bob Dylan could get out of the venue so fast because he is so about business. Jim James, when they did I'll shut up after this one. Jim James, the Americana Rama tour in 2012. Jim James was like, I can't believe I'm going to be gigging with Bob Dylan. We'll be hanging out backstage and jamming. Jim James said he never saw Bob Dylan. He saw the same Bob Dylan we did, which is the guru on the stage. Okay, about Jim James. March 21st, new My Morning Jacket album called Is. Jason Isbell today, it got leaked. New Jason Isbell solo album Friday, March the 7th. Something in the Fox in the Hole or something like that. Fox? Oh my gosh, it's going to be and Willie Carlisle, who put out 2 albums in 2024, has got a new album coming out. So the music's going to get me through the first year of Trump version 2 for sure.
I want to go back to something you said earlier. You saw Dylan while you had COVID. Were you aware that you had COVID? Because if so, shame on you.
No. And as we were driving to the show. I said, Jeannie, I think I might be coming down with something. She's like, oh, it's nothing. And it was a masked show. So at least I was masked. No, I didn't get the test back until the next day when I got home, and I felt like even crappier. No, I didn't knowingly go to a Bob Dylan show with COVID. And it was in high COVID, and it was masks required it wasn't at the Bijou. It was at the bowling center. It was where the Knoxville, the UT place. Yeah.
The UTI.
I got 2 cents. I got 2 cents, and they're burning a hole in my pocket right now. Just have to respond to something, Andrew. I don't think Dylan is doing it for the money. I think he does not need the money. I think he's doing it because he has to. And Jim James didn't meet Dylan because Dylan doesn't exist. Dylan said, "You're Bob Dylan."
Yeah, no, I don't think Bob necessarily.
This guy who's been stalking Dylan for like 40 years, went through his garbage. Did you see that?
No, tell us more about that.
He's like an 80-year-old dope dealer who lives. He might be in Westchester or the Bronx now, but he's like a small-time weed dealer. But he's been after Dylan's ass ever since he went electric. Like he he's sort of reappeared because of this movie. Like he was at the theater shouting down the screen, you know. But he's just a guy who's kind of lived to chase Dylan forever. You know, the Dylan who doesn't exist, who died at Newport.
I am positive you're right, Joe, that Dylan has other motivations to tour endlessly besides financial. And I'm sure he's committed to his craft. And I love even croaky, fragile, aging Dylan. But I literally, every time I went to see Dylan, I always had these expectations that were so crushed by the actual experience. And going into this movie, I had pretty fucking high expectations, and the movie exceeded all of my expectations. So Rick wants to talk about the movie.
Please.
Rick.
One of the things I learned today in prepping for this discussion is that I had known that Odie Benson of the Four Tops was who originally wanted the Four Tops to do this song, What's Going On. But before he brought it to Marvin, I learned that he took it to Joan Baez and pitched it to her.
Benson?
Yes, which that would have been a very different rendition.
Yeah.
Of what's going on.
Yeah.
For sure. I echo what Andrew said. I think the title is a wink and a hint. This movie really isn't about Dylan as much as it is about a moment in American music and political history, and it was sort of set up, I think, just cinematically to try to show the anti-authoritarianism of rock and roll. And in this case, it was Dylan going electric in the face of the pressures of the folk scene, whereas in Baz Luhrmann's Elvis, it was Elvis disregarding the strictures of Memphis, not to even move a finger when he was performing at the ball field there. But I saw it with you, Andrew, on what, your third? Was I present on the third around?
That's right. That was my third of 5. Yes, yeah.
It's a very entertaining movie. I was surprised that it didn't get any Golden Globes, but we'll see.
But Chalamet is going to be doing double duty on SNL, and I have a feeling he's going to be singing some Dylan.
No doubt.
Either that or his old rap stuff.
They asked him if he would be based on the success of his Dylan album, his Dylan covers album, which is essentially what the soundtrack is, whether or not he was going to go and start a career in music, a la Billy Bob Thornton and Keanu Reeves. And when you think about that, these guys are amazing, but nobody follows their music. Nobody follows Mandy Moore's music career. They like
Kevin Bacon.
Like I just found out, Scott, that Mandy Moore has a version of "Hole of the Moon" that she put out in like 2003.
Yes,
but so Chalamet is not going to go the way of Keanu Reeves, Billy Bob Thornton, Mandy Moore,
William Shatner.
I think he's going to go on SNL and sing all the songs from Wonka.
Ooh. Oh.
That would be rock and roll
funny, because that would be like Dylan going electric.
Yeah, it'd be the best sketch of the night.
Yes.
I don't know in a complete unknown when he started rocking out, I was enthralled. I wanted to imagine that. I would have been like, wow, if I was seeing that rather than appalled, because I know there were probably people there who were blown away in the right way.
Okay, was anybody else really amused by how small they made Newport look?
Yeah. I noted that.
It looked like it was like a festival in the park.
I think it is a much smaller festival, though. I don't think it is. It's not magnitude like Bonnaroo or some of the other festivals we've been to. So, and I'm a sucker for like all like the period, like a good historical drama. I'm a sucker for I was a sucker for all of the like the booze bottles and the cigarettes and the typewriters and the just, I mean, even in the opening scene when he gets dropped off, you know, and he's walking down through the village and all the different storefronts, you know, and the graffiti and the folklore center with the picture of, you know, Pete Seeger and Woody Guthrie in the window, and Dave Van Ronk, Joe, you're a Dave Van Ronk fan. He never gets named, but he's got these great scenes. He's in the movie. He's got these great scenes. He's like, is it a country song or is it a folk song? And aren't we always just writing the same song? You know, he was great.
I don't know why they didn't make Dave Van Ronk. Maybe Dylan said no Dave Van Ronk.
No, he's listed on the credits as Dave Van Ronk. He just he's never introduced as he's never acknowledged as Dave. I mean, Odetta doesn't talk, but you keep seeing Odetta, and then somebody finally, I think Edward Norton or somebody finally was like, sorry, Odetta, or whatever, you know, like somebody addressed her. But
Right. And let's give a hand to James Mangold. I've been a fan of him as a director, and I'm going to date myself. His first major film was called Copland, which is just incredibly underrated. He directed Logan, which is one of the more critically acclaimed Marvel movies, and just, I'm a fan.
We've made it to 1 hour. So everyone, we are going to be back in February. We're going to go offline and we're going to talk about what day in February we're going to do it and what the host is going to be. But we're going to shake up the format a little bit. And if the technology works, Gus will be joining us from Dublin, Ireland at our very next episode. So safe travels over the ocean on an aeroplane to the land of the green leprechaun and of Bono and all of my favorite things, Ireland.
Take a picture with the Phil Lynott statue.
Will do.
Yeah,
I'll make a note right now.
Awesome.
So from Cookeville, Charlotte, North Carolina, Nashville, Tennessee, and New City, New York, we have been the Music Nerds Record Club number 12. We'll be back in February. We'll post the dates on our socials, and we're going to experiment with new topics and new formats for year 2, but episode 13 coming up soon. Thanks for tuning in.
Have fun.